I see we have quite a few people who've joined us. Welcome everybody once again. This is Gauri here, your host for the evening, registered dietitian at the client support desk on the Canadian Celiac Association. We have our presenter here today with us, and we will short just another minute so that we can have some more people join us. I thank you all for your patience today while we let other people come in. Another minute and we shall begin. Okay, let's begin. Good evening and welcome everybody once again. Thank you for joining the Canadian Celiac Association webinar on empowering your body through nutrition. I am Gauri Bava, the registered dietitian on the client support desk for the Canadian Celiac Association, and I am joined here today with Melissa Secord, our executive director at the CCA, and our presenter for the evening, registered dietitian Adrianna Smallwood. During these times, I, on behalf of Team CCA, would like to request you all to stay safe and practice the social distancing recommendations by maintaining a safe distance from each other while continuing to practice social solidarity. CCA has developed a page of resources on our website. You can check them out after the webinar at www.celiac.ca. As we continue to strive to bring about more information for you while you stay safely within your homes to make a gluten-free journey more navigable. Before we start the webinar today, I would like to review how the webinar works. All the participants are muted so that everybody can enjoy the session with minimal disruptions. If you have a question for our presenter, please type them in the question and answer box. We will get to them at the end of the presentation. I apologize in advance if we cannot get to some questions. We will provide a question and answer document along with the webinar recording to you by email. There is a chat box also available. You can chat between yourselves. However, please do not ask any questions in the chat box as we intend to use the questions put up in the question and answer box for all the questions to be answered later. This session is recorded. We will be sending everyone a copy of the PowerPoint slides deck and a link to the webinar, so watch your inbox in the coming days. You can watch some of our past webinar educations on our YouTube channel also. I would now like to introduce our speaker for tonight, Adrianna Smallwood. Welcome.
Hi there, thank you.
Adrianna is a registered dietitian and has a private practice. She also sits on the executive board for the local St. John's chapter for the Celiac Association, as well as the National Professional Advisory Committee and Council. She's also a regional media spokesperson for the Dietitians of Canada. As a new mom and someone with celiac herself, she has a passion for creating meal options that are healthy and delicious. Adrianna's philosophy, while trying to maintain a healthy gluten-free diet, is to enjoy everything in moderation. There are too many foods out there, everything, and to refrain from even trying them. Healthy living and healthy eating means consuming foods that satisfy all our needs, where it is substantiated or for pleasure. I would now like to request Adrianna to please start.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you so much everyone for joining us tonight. This presentation was put together for March as being Nutrition Month. So dietitians, it's kind of their month to get our message across. And this year, it's about more than food. So we're building on the theme of Canada's Food Guide in 2019, the new food guide. And so that's what this presentation is going to go through. So like Rory said, if you have any questions, we'll be answering them at the end. And if we can't get to all of them, then I'll be doing a question and answer document that everyone will be getting. So tonight we're going to be talking about some advocacy, so what the CCA is doing on behalf of you during this time, some labeling, and in particular, a new labeling document that the CCA has just released, Canada's Food Guide, the new food guide released in 2019, what a healthy diet should look like, a healthy gluten-free diet, and some resources that you can use, and where I got my information to begin with, really. So right now, you know, people are going through a very challenging time, and a lot of people are getting laid off, and money's kind of tight. So food security is a big issue right now, and we want to make sure that you have access to safe foods, particularly gluten-free foods. So we want to provide information. We want to provide you with information that you can give to food banks. So if you have to access a food bank or some kind of financial service, please don't hesitate to reach out to the CCA for information, in particular our labeling document, so that we can provide it to the food bank so they have more information. Do not accept food that is not gluten-free. So don't hesitate. I know that it's challenging when you're hungry and you want to get something to eat and it doesn't really matter. But remember that you're advocating on behalf of your disease and on behalf of your food security right now. And you don't want to eat something that's going to make you sick. So make sure that you really advocate for having gluten-free food. Explain those health risks, because some of the people at this are volunteers in food banks and they're not really familiar with what celiac is, what these symptoms are, what eating food with gluten in it can possibly do to you. You can offer them help to review food labels. So if you go in person, you can go through some things, show them what they need to know just in case, so they can help somebody else in the future. And you can even provide them with a copy of the CCA's new labeling document. You can do things like request gluten-free foods be kept aside for individuals with celiac disease and in designated areas. And please let your local CCA chapter or the national office, if there's no chapter in your area, know if you're having difficulty finding gluten-free options at this time. And we will do whatever we can to try and help you. So I want to draw attention to the new labeling document. So we did a survey there a couple months ago, and we wanted to make it inclusive because there's a lot of confusion about the contain statement, the may contain statement, whether it should be gluten certified. So I'm not going to really touch on that right now because one of our other dietitians, Shelley Case, did very recently do a webinar on this. And if you go to the website that's listed there, www.celiac.ca/living-gluten-free/food labeling, you can sign up with your email and they will send you both a link of that webinar where it explains in extreme detail all the different labeling requirements, as well as the PDF version of this document. So basically, it just talks about labels. There's a basic label like the one here, where it talks about specifically right within the ingredient label where wheat is contained, or things like that are gluten-free certified. So like I said, I'm not going to really get too much into that now, but I will a little bit in a couple of slides. But for the specific labeling things, it would be great to go over, especially now that we all have some time. We're sitting at home and we have some extra time on our hands. The webinar is just an hour, so it's something that's very interesting, especially in these times when labels can be really confusing. So take a look at that. Sign up. It's a free document, so take a look at that. And here is Canada's beautiful new food guide. It's quite different from previous versions of the food guide, and we're all familiar with the rainbow or the pyramid scheme. And this one's a plate model. And dietitians have been using the plate model now for, I've been doing it in my practice for about 5 years. So essentially, if you were to go on the foodguide.canada.ca website, it's meant not to be a printable version like past versions of the food guide, but a clickable version that you could go through online and navigate that way. So if you were to click on the fruits and vegetables, have plenty of vegetables and fruits, it would take you to the fruits and vegetables section and talk to you about different fruits and vegetables and ways that you can work that into your diet. So if you are the type of person who you don't really like fruits and vegetables, there's lots of different options on how to work it into your diet. It even talks so far as about canned versus frozen and that kind of thing. If you were to click on the portion of the protein group where it says eat protein foods, you would be brought to the protein options. Again, it would show you how to focus on plant-based proteins. For example, if you don't have a lot of experience with plant-based proteins, it would talk about how you would prepare those, different ways you could, different recipes you could use, even how to cook. And then again, if you were to click on the choose whole grains, whole grain foods, it would go through different things for that too. But the whole idea of the new food guide was to focus a lot more on eating behaviors. So that's why the Nutrition Month theme is more than food, because it was found that Canadians are kind of veering away. Its cooking skills and food skills have decreased and declined in the past years. So it focused more on not just telling you what to eat, but how you should be eating it, how you can prepare it. It's meant to be more of a tool as opposed to just a quick look. So if you haven't had a chance to look through that, that's definitely something else that you can do in the next couple of weeks while you're at home. So healthy eating is more than the food you eat. It's also about where, when, and why, and how you eat. So being mindful of your eating habits. So this is something I think that we're all really guilty of. You know, we're sitting at the TV and we're eating our supper, or we just could be snacking. So I'm sure many of you have found yourselves sitting at the couch with a bag of chips or a bag of popcorn or even a bag of candy, and before you know it, you're at the end of the bag. And you probably don't even taste it because you're just mindlessly eating. You know, so it's better to take your time. If you want to have that chocolate, you want to have those chips, you should be enjoying it. So take some time, sit there, really enjoy your food. Notice when you're hungry and when you're full. A lot of times if you're tuned out and you're not really being mindful of your eating, you miss that fullness cue. And, you know, a lot of people eat so fast, and then before they know it, they're full beyond really comfort. And that's because you're eating too quickly, or you're not really tuning into your body as you're eating. We want to cook more often. This is especially extremely important for individuals with celiac disease, because I find myself, you know, if you go out to the grocery store and you're getting pre-prepared things, or if you're going to, say, your favorite gluten-free bakery or your favorite gluten-free restaurant, more than likely, because, you know, they have to make up for those texture and taste difference, there's usually extra fat and extra sugar, probably extra salt in those food products. So making more food at home and cooking more often is going to be really your best friend. So you want to plan what you eat, because we're all really busy. Life is hectic, except for right now when, you know, we're all sitting at home trying to wait for this COVID thing to pass over. But, you know, life is hectic. So plan what you're going to eat. You know, if you have a particular day of the week, you know, whether it's a Tuesday evening or a Sunday afternoon, you sit down, you make out a menu for the week, because there's nothing worse than, you know, thinking in your head what you're going to do on the night of, and you go to the cupboard and you only have a couple ingredients to make 5 different things, but there's nothing in there to make an entire meal. So, you know, if you plan out the things you need, then you can make a grocery list that corresponds to that. And if there's other people in your home, involve them in the planning and the preparing of the meals, because like they say, many hands make light work. And if you have picky children at home, or children who have celiac, you know, they're much more likely to eat things that they help prepare. Kids kind of have sometimes this trust thing. So if you know, involve them in the process, whether it's just like mixing something or setting the table, or, you know, picking one of the meals for the week or bringing them to the grocery store, they'll be much more inclined to eat the food. Enjoy your food. You know, there's nothing wrong with trying different foods and making your culture part of the traditions that you create. And that can be part of healthy eating also. You know, we live in a place in Canada where we have an abundance of different cultural foods. And, you know, some people can say, you know, takeout food or other cultural food is higher in fat, higher in salt, it's not as healthy. But everything is part of healthy eating. And those different flavors, those different textures, those different foods, that's what makes eating so satisfying. And the biggest thing is eating meals with others. So a lot of times we find ourselves eating on the run, eating at our desk, but so much research shows that eating meals with others is important for so many reasons. And you're much more likely to be eating a healthy meal if you're eating at the table and eating with others. So what does Canada's New Food Guide, what are the main recommendations? So you want to make sure you're eating, their focus was to eat mainly plant-based meals, plant-based foods. And that's just because plant-based foods are higher in different kinds of nutrients, they're lower in fat, they're higher in fiber, and all things that the Canadian diet is kind of lacking in. So they wanted to focus on eating more vegetables and fruits and whole grain foods and protein foods. Choose protein foods that come from plants more often, and choose foods with healthy fats instead of saturated fats. And I'm going to get more into detail in these in the next coming slides. And you want to limit highly processed foods. And this more so than ever is more important, like I said, for individuals with celiac disease, because more and more products are becoming available on the shelves. And while they're becoming more and more delicious, I've had celiac I've had celiac for 8 years. And 8 years ago, I couldn't find anything in the grocery store. And now there are so many things and they all look delicious and I always want to try something new. But I pick up the ingredient labels sometimes and you can see that the amount of sugar and fat in most of these products is much higher than something that you could probably make at home. So you want to limit these highly processed foods. Prepare meals and snack using ingredients that have little to no added sodium, sugar, or saturated fat. And again, I have a couple of recommendations coming up. And choose healthier menu options when eating out. Make water your drink of choice and replace sugary drinks with water. And use food labels. So like I said, comparing different things. One type of bread, there's so many versions of gluten-free bread, but one might have more sugar, one might have more fiber. So you want to pick the ones that have the lower sugar and make sure you're reading those labels. And be aware that food marketing can influence your choices. So a lot of times you're walking through the supermarket and shelf space is actually purchased, so the things that are eye level sometimes are, sold to the highest bidder. So be aware that, the things at eye level aren't often the best. They're not always the best, I should say. So make sure you're checking the whole shelf and taking a good glance at that. So eating more plant foods, what does that look like? Fill your plate with at least 2/3 of plant food. So I just don't mean fruits and vegetables, half your plate, but like your protein version or something like that. Things like beans, peas, lentils, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, and think of meat more as a garnish. So a lot of individuals, their plate probably looks like the opposite of Canada's Food Guide. So rather than having their plate fruits and vegetables, it's always, especially here in Newfoundland where I'm from, meat is usually half of the plate, and then a quarter of the plate will be the veggies and a quarter will be a starch. So you want to make sure that meat is more of a garnish rather than the main focus of the meal. Include a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. Get experimental. There's new fruits and veggies in the supermarket all the time. If you're at home and the kids again are picky, make it a fun game. Once a week, you could pick up a new fruit or veggie, find a recipe that incorporates that and try and make it a fun game where you all have to try it. Include vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts, often those green veggies, and try to eat whole grain foods or legumes with every meal. So how much is often the question I get, how much fiber do you want? So about 21 to 38 grams, depending on your weight, and increase the intake slowly and add additional fluids. So you don't want to just go from eating, say, 2 grams of fiber a day to 38 grams of fiber a day. You want to do that slowly and make sure you're drinking extra water as you're adding additional fiber. And that's just because it can cause some upset with your gastrointestinal system. It could cause some cramping. It could possibly cause some constipation. So increase that slowly. Choose foods high in fiber and natural sugars and spread them throughout the day. So things like beans, peas, and lentils, dry and canned. So if, like I said, with the labeling document, it goes through specifically what to look for. But with our dried beans, peas, and lentils, if you do go for dried, you want to make sure prior to eating the dried beans, peas, or lentils that you dump them out on the counter or on, say, like a cutting board, and you sift through them, because a lot of these grains are sorted sorted based on their size. So sometimes different grains can end up in the beans, peas, or lentils. And it wouldn't be uncommon, say, for a wheat grain to end up in there. So it's really important to go through those, give them a good wash before you cook them, after you've sorted through them, just to make sure. And if you're going for canned, you want to make sure that they have the gluten-free claim on there. I know you can't find lentils anymore with the gluten-free claim, but you can find beans and chickpeas for certain. Unico and Primo, or Primo, however you would say that, they both have options with the gluten-free certification on there. You want to make sure when you pour out the beans, peas, or lentils in the cans that you wash them thoroughly. That syrupy stuff on there, that's not really supposed to be eaten. Flours, pasta, and crackers made from whole grains are higher in fiber, like the brown rice flours, bean flours, and oat flours. Oats are high in fiber. You can add gram flaxseed and chia seed to things, and psyllium nuts and other seeds. And include vegetarian meals more often. So usually I suggest to people who don't have a lot of experience with vegetarian meals to start with at least 2 per week. So experiment with recipes that include beans, peas, and lentils. Make it something that you're familiar with. So if you like, say, chili, you can try like a vegetarian chili, and leaving out the meat and subbing in an extra 2 to 3 cans of beans in its place. Or you can try something like black bean tacos, where you're using your gluten-free taco seasoning. As opposed to using it on the ground beef, you can put the seasoning on the black beans and try some black bean tacos or enchiladas or something like that. So here are some snack and meal ideas incorporating more fiber into your diet. So if you were to have something like a half a cup of yogurt for a snack, you could add a tablespoon each of gram flaxseed and chia seed for some fiber. If you were to make some oatmeal, a quarter cup of oatmeal with a tablespoon each of ground flaxseed and chia seed. It doesn't have to be a quarter cup, but whatever your serving of oatmeal is for the morning, you can add a tablespoon each of ground flaxseed and chia seeds to it. You can add ground flax to different sauces, like spaghetti sauce, for example, or your chili. You can sprinkle it on pizza or casseroles before adding the cheese. It hides pretty well in things. You don't want to overdo it, but you can sprinkle it over. Nuts, seeds, and their butters paired with fruit. For example, you can cut up apples into slices and dip it in peanut butter. You can aim for 2 vegetarian meals per week, like I suggested, each week using beans or lentils, like vegetarian chili, black bean burgers, chickpea salad. 1 piece of fruit or 1 cup of chopped fruit or veggies with each meal. So making sure you're having a piece of fruit or veggies with your breakfast, lunch, and supper. You can have a half a cup of cooked veggies with your lunch or supper, and make your own baked goods using high fiber flour, brown rice, buckwheat, bean, or oat, beans and lentils, and try subbing ground flax in for flour with a ratio of 3 to 1 is what I find works. So say if you were to take like a muffin recipe off the internet, and it calls for, say, 2 cups of flour, you can, say, put in 2.5 cups of flour and add a half a cup of ground flax, something like that. And any recipe that you see online, it's usually too high in sugar. So if a recipe, say, calls for half a cup of sugar, you can easily put in a quarter cup. So I always half the amount of sugar in any recipe. So you can see, if you were to make a recipe at home, you can make it much healthier by halving the amount of sugar and subbing some of the flour for higher higher fiber flours. And then also subbing in some of the ground flaxseed, because it's also a grain. It doesn't mess up the texture. I found if I use a 3 to 1 ratio, it doesn't really mess up the texture too much. So moving on to fat, another big thing that the Canada's Food Guide focuses on is healthy fat. So a gluten-free diet can be high in unhealthy fats. And I just mean because we're adding extra fat into a lot of these recipes to make up for that texture difference. So prepackaged baked goods, cookies, and granola bars, those types of things are usually higher in unhealthy fats. Aim for a lower fat diet, so choose foods low in unhealthy fat or high in heart healthy fats. And what do I mean by that? So choosing things low fat dairy products, lean cuts of meat. Fish like salmon, mackerel, and tuna are higher in omega-3 fats, those heart healthy fats. Nuts and seeds tend to be higher in those heart healthy fats. Avocado, canola and olive oil, chia seeds, and ground flaxseed. I want to make a note if you're going to go get those ground flaxseed or chia seeds. Once they've been opened, you should keep them refrigerated. I know they're kept on the shelf, but once you open them and expose them to the air, those heart healthy fats can break down pretty quickly. So you want to store those in the fridge. The ground flaxseed, I always say ground. If you were to eat flaxseed just as it is, our body doesn't really break it down. So it can only utilize the flaxseed if it's ground. So make sure, I mean, you can buy full flax seeds. Just make sure you're grinding it, say, with a coffee grinder or something like that prior to use. Limit added fats, such as oils, salad dressings, and margarines to about 3 to 6 teaspoons per day. Cook using lower fat methods, so baking, steaming, or braising foods instead of, say, frying it on the frying pan or using a deep fryer. And limit your intake of high processed foods like fast food, grocery store takeout, or baked goods, and chocolate bars. Notice how I say limit. You don't want to avoid these things because, there are a lot of delicious cookies and cakes and muffins out there. You just don't want to make those a weekly purchase. It's something that you want to treat yourself with, but you definitely want to enjoy those things still. Some meal and snack ideas using the lower fat and lower bad fats, for lack of a better word, and higher heart healthy fats. So something like a quarter cup of nuts or seeds would be a serving. A tablespoon of chia or flaxseed, again, to your yogurt or oatmeal. Crackers with 2 ounces of low-fat cheese. 3 to 4 ounce servings of fish per week, like tuna or salmon. Use canola oil in cooking and baking. And this is a big thing. A lot of people use olive oil in cooking. And I'm not saying that it's not healthy, but olive oil has a very low smoke point. So it breaks down when you're using it in cooking, and it's not as healthy then. So you want to use canola oil in cooking and baking. It's still high in those omega-3 fats, but it holds up. It has a higher smoke point, sorry. So, you can use it up to 450 degrees. You can still use olive oil to make your own salad dressing. So olive oil is very healthy and very high in omega-3 fats, but it's meant to be used raw. It's not something that's meant to be used in cooking. So if there's anything that you take from this today, is that you want to make sure you're not using your olive oil in cooking. Use avocado as a spread instead of mayo. Choose Greek yogurt rather than sour cream. This is something that I will never turn back because the Greek yogurt is much tastier, and I actually thoroughly enjoy it on nachos and things like that. Make your own baked goods using the Nubicel margarine or canola oil, again, because the canola oil is more heat stable. Store-bought baked goods is high in fat, like lard or vegetable oils. So again, even if, something I used to do before I was gluten-free, I would always sub applesauce for fat. And because the gluten made such a good texture, it didn't affect the end product. But I find that I can always make a product that's gluten-free, higher in fiber and low in sugar, but I can never take out the fat because it really makes the end texture really crumbly and not as good. So you are gonna have to, keep some fat. But at the end of the day, it's still always going to be better than if you're buying something in the store. So try and experiment with muffins or breads or cakes or different things like that while you're home. And you'll notice, especially if you don't have a lot of time, you can always make extra and freeze it. And that way you're not making something every single week. A healthy diet is limited in added sugar. So, there's this big debate about whether or not you should be limiting the amount of fruits and milk and yogurt and all that. When we say limit sugar, we mean added sugar. So it's not food that's naturally found in the product. So milk has natural milk sugar. So you're not going to find, white milk, for example, has, I believe, 8 grams of sugar per 1 cup. that is not sugar that's added to the milk. That's the lactose that's there. If you see chocolate milk now, you'll get upwards of 15 grams of sugar. And that is, some of that is absolutely added sugar. But when I say added sugars, I mean things like soft drinks, juices, flavored drinks, fruit punches, iced tea, sports and energy drinks, milkshakes, and sweetened fruit juice. And a big thing I've spoken to a lot of sports teams is energy drinks and sports drinks. And kids don't really need those, it's better for them to have water really while they're doing their activities. They don't need the amount of sugar that's in those beverages. And then once they're done with their sports activity, it's usually about an hour or so, they can have a piece of fruit or something like that, or, like a glass of chocolate milk. They don't need to have these like really high sugary sports drinks. It's not really necessary, and it's adding a lot of calories to the diet that they don't really need. They can be getting it somewhere else. And like I said, don't avoid sugary foods like chocolate cakes, cookies, and pastries. Save them for special occasions and have small portions. Again, it doesn't have to be a special occasion. If you want to sit down every Friday night or Saturday night, whatever your relaxing night is, and have like your chocolate bar, it's okay. Like, you're not doing it every single day. It's the things that you're doing every single day that affect your health. So remember that. Like, if you're going to do something 1 to 2 times a week, it's not the thing that's affecting your health. It's the things that you do every single day. Actually, I want to go back to that for a second. Another big thing that I'm seeing now for people who are limiting sugar is 0-calorie foods or diet sugars. And a lot of those, especially the alcohol sugars, so sorbitol, mannitol, anything that ends in "-ol", it's really hard on your gut. So if you find that you're having like a diet pop or say like an ice cream that has no added sugar, but it's clearly very sweet, it has those alcohol sugars, anything that has 0 calories, but it's a food, means it's been altered so that your body doesn't break it down. Calories happen when your body breaks it down. So think about that. That means that whatever that is hanging around in your gut, and your body's still working on it, trying to digest it, even though it can't. So if you've had like a diet pop before and you felt bloated, that's why. And when you have celiac, we already have all these gut issues. You don't want to add to it. So you want to make sure you're watching for those lower calorie things. It's better to have a treat and have the regular pop than having a diet pop, because it's going to affect your gut less. A healthy diet is lower in red meat and processed meat. I know for us with celiac disease, there's not a lot of processed meats that we can really have anyways, because they usually have breadcrumbs or something in them. But you want to consume red meat like beef, pork, and lamb less often and take smaller portions, so about the size of the palm of your hand, which usually adds up to be about 4 ounces in the average person. Limit or avoid processed meats such as sausages, bacon, ham, and hot dogs altogether, because they're so extremely high in sodium and fat. And that in particular is if you have other health issues aside from celiac. So, especially if you have type 2 diabetes or any kind of heart issues, it's better to avoid those altogether. You want to consume at least 2 servings of fatty fish each week. So 1 serving of fish is about 2.5 ounces or 75 grams. And if you choose fish like char, herring, mackerel, salmon, or trout, those tend to be higher in the omega-3 fats, which are your heart-healthy fats. They're the ones that have the nice bright pink red colors. And you can do any of those fish, like, if we can't, especially right now, I'm going to talk about at the end how to stock a good pantry for, if you have to stock up for 2 to 3 weeks. But if you have to choose canned fish, it's just as healthy, but you want to make sure you're choosing something that's packaged in water as opposed to brine, because if you pick something that's packaged in brine, it's going to be extremely salty, and you don't want that, and it's probably higher than what you need. So you want to choose canned fish that's packaged in water as opposed to salt. So when I said, Canada's New Food Guide wants to be more plant-based, they do encourage consuming plant-based proteins. Things like nuts and seeds, beans, peas, and lentils, tofu, edamame, quinoa, TVP or textural vegetable protein, and protein powders. So again, some of these things might be considered higher risk for cross-contamination. And I would encourage you, again, to go look at that labeling document and watch that webinar for more tips and tricks on how to navigate those food labels. But choosing to incorporate more plant-based proteins into your diet, like I said, start with 2 days a week. And it doesn't have to be 2 different meals. If you want to make your veggie chili for supper and then have leftovers for lunch, that's still considered 2 meals. I don't want you to go, slaving in the kitchen making all these crazy vegetarian meals and you don't know if you're going to like them. 2 meals is supper and leftovers, absolutely. So, start small if it's not something that you're used to and work up from there. Alcohol is a big one. Especially when we find like a good gluten-free beer or a nice cider, it's hard sometimes to stay away from that. But we want to limit our alcohol consumption. And just because, it can add a lot of additional calories into our diet that our bodies aren't really equipped to digest very well. So if you do choose to drink, consider the recommendations. 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men. And a lot of people ask me if it's okay to save those up. These are the amounts that are considered safe in one setting that won't affect or impair your liver. So if you want to save up all your 7 drinks for Sunday, that's going to cause your liver to work harder than it needs to because your liver detoxifies your body, and alcohol is considered essentially poison to your body. So your liver is going to work overdrive. So you want to make sure, if you want to have your 1 glass of wine a night, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. 1 serving of alcohol is equal to 12 ounces of beer or 5 ounces of wine or 1.5 ounces of 80 proof distilled spirits. So we put together, the CCA Professional Advisory Council put together a gluten-free shopping list just yesterday. And, we've been told with COVID happening that we want to stock up on the essentials and make sure that we're not going out too often. So you want to make sure that you're getting lots of foods with a longer shelf life. So what are we looking at? Things like dried pulses, lentils, beans, and peas. And we went through what we had to do with those. Make sure you're dumping them out, going through them, sorting to make sure there's no extra grains in there. Canned pulses, canned fruits in their own juice or water. And again, just like I said with the fish, you want to make sure the fruits are canned in water. And that's just because if they're canned in syrup or something like that, is always extra sugar. So if fruit is canned in water and you look at the label and you say, oh, there's 20 grams of sugar per serving, that is how much natural sugar would be in that fruit. Okay, so that's okay. But if it's canned in syrup and it has something like 30 grams of sugar, that's not all natural. So you want to make sure you're picking things that are canned in water. Canned salmon, tuna, and sardines, canned tomatoes, tomato paste, nut butters or seed butters like peanut, almond, sunflower, etc. Shelf-stable milks, because, you can get your regular milk for the start of the week. But if we're looking at, keeping inside for 2 or 3 weeks, we want to make sure we have something like almond milk, cashew milk, oat milk, something like that in the cupboard just in case. Things like rice. And we're not preparing for a power outage or anything like that. We're just making sure that we have enough on hand so we don't have to go out. So things like frozen fruits and vegetables are a great idea as well. And on a regular basis, I get this question a lot. Fresh versus frozen or canned when we're talking about fruits and vegetables. I would almost, especially where we are in Newfoundland, our fruits and vegetables travel a long time to get here. And fruits and vegetables start degrading the moment that they're picked from the field. So if you are buying fruits and vegetables from a farmer, absolutely they will be fresh, they will be nutritious, they'll be at the peak of their nutrition. But if you're buying something from a supermarket, fresh fruits and produce, they've probably traveled quite a bit to get there. So I would suggest that canned fruits and frozen fruits and vegetables are healthier because they're blanched, which means they're dipped very quickly in boiling water to remove or to kill any of the enzymes that might degrade them, and then they're flash frozen. So they're frozen at the peak of their nutrition. So, stocking up on canned and frozen fruits and vegetables, eating all your fresh stuff towards the beginning of the week and then towards the end of the week, dipping into your canned and frozen is a great idea, and it prevents you from traveling to the grocery store every single day of the week and spending more money than you really want to. So some other staples that you want to keep around: gluten-free pastas, gluten-free rolled oats, gluten-free granola and other cereals, gluten-free flours and starches, gluten-free crackers and rice cakes, gluten-free snack bars, and gluten-free broths. So I put those kind of separately because those are the ones that you want to make sure that they specifically say gluten-free because they are higher risk things. And I want to draw your attention to the bottom. I have a link there, www.celiac.ca/news-events/COVID-19. There's lots of information on there about what the CCA is doing for you during this time. Things like we're actively seeking out food banks and trying to help secure gluten-free foods. There's a list of gluten-free establishments on there of where you can order foods from. And also this gluten-free shopping list will be posted there. I believe it was posted there today. So this is something that you should always have in your cupboard, just the staples to get you through. So here are my resources. So this is where I get a lot of my information. The Canadian Celiac Association has a wealth of information on their webpage. Canada's Food Guide, like I said, you can go through there. There's lots of information. It's meant to be a document that you can go online and look at. You know, you could spend hours on there, and I have, so I can tell you. Dietitians of Canada has a couple of websites. It's www.dietitians.ca. The other one, unlockfood.ca, has a lot of great resources, things like healthy lunches for kids to go to school with, healthy lunches to bring to work, different things like that. Trisha Thompson is a dietitian. She has gluten-free watchdogs. So she does a lot of research and on different products and gluten-free recalls and different things like that. Super interesting. She has a lot of things. So, you know, follow her, take a look at her website, Health Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. You can sign up to be part of both of those. And the same with the Celiac Association. All three of those are coming out you know, regularly with different surveys and things. And if you want to be part of what happens and say, for example, Canada's New Food Guide, they opened it to everyone and they tried to incorporate as many suggestions as they could. So signing up for those and being a part of those surveys is a way to make sure that your voice is heard when they're trying to create new resources. Pulse Canada is another great website, and they have so many recipes on there. They have a free recipe booklet that you can download, and it shows you different ways in cooking and baking to use things like beans, peas, and lentils. And then there's some great books too, like the Gluten-Free and Definitive Resource Guide by Shelley Case, and that goes through, like, you know, it's really good for not only someone who's newly diagnosed, but also somebody who's been diagnosed for a long time and wants to brush up. It's got lots of great information in there, plus meal plans and recipes. And then the other one is Gluten Freedom by Dr. Lucio Fasano. Lots of great information on there, especially if you're newly diagnosed. So that ends the presentation for tonight. Is there any questions?
Yes, this is Gauri again here, and Adrianna, thank you so much. It was wonderful information, and I'm sure it's going to be very helpful during these trying times also. I would now like to take a moment and mention that we are a national charity, and in order for us to continue offering education via webinars or RD Selena, we have another dietitian on the professional advisory committee who does virtual office hours through the Facebook page, which has over 12,000 followers or members in our community. Our advocacies, investment in research, client and peer support, we rely heavily on donations. If you enjoyed tonight's presentation, we would like to request you to think about donating and supporting us also. Please visit us at www.celiac.ca and click the donate button.